Hey YouTube. So today I'm here to talk to you about the Hummel Fantasy that I performed in the last video. If you didn't get a chance to check that out, I'm going to put a link right here for you to go on and check that. Make sure you look at that before we go through all this. So today we're going to talk about some stuff about the composer and the arrangers, also where you can get this piece, and I'm going to give you some of my tips and tricks and things that I did going along to try and prepare for this piece. So with that, let's talk about Hummel. So Johann Hummel, he was born in 1778, lived till 1837, so this is a classical period piece. This piece was originally written for viola. Hummel himself was a piano player. His teacher was actually Mozart. He worked with Beethoven, Clementi, Haydn, Salieri, so he worked with a whole bunch of the people that we talk about in this time period. And one of his biggest accomplishments, and not a lot of people know this because mostly Haydn did this, but one of his biggest accomplishments was that he did work as the music director for the Esterhazy family. So the arrangers for this were Rob Childs and Philip Wilby. If you're a brass bander, if you play in brass bands, you know a whole bunch about these guys. Rob Childs was the conductor for the Corey Band for a very, very long time out of Cardiff, Wales. He was a euphonium player himself. He also taught for the Royal Northern College of Music, and he has a long list of arrangements and things that he did to kind of bolster the euphonium repertoire. Wilby, another brass band person, and you've probably, especially if you're in a competitive brass band, you've probably played one of his test pieces. So these two definitely took this piece. It was originally a viola piece, and definitely took it with a fine-tooth comb and really went through it and made sure that everything kind of worked out for the instrument. So even though this is from the Virtuoso collection, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a virtuoso to play it. Though it is quite difficult, it is meant to be facilitated on our instrument, and it is meant for this instrument. Unlike a lot of other string things that we can take straight over, they really did a good job of editing this particular piece. So we're going to talk about what a fantasy is in terms of a musical piece. A fantasy is, you want to kind of think about it like a medley. What it was is in the classical era, they would take the most popular tunes from operas and symphonies and condense it down for a solo instrument. So that's what this is. And this particular one had a lot of works from Mozart, Don Giovanni, Marriage of Figaro, and some works from Rossini. However, this particular edit only has some Don Giovanni in it. And that's just right in the very opening. So just keep that in mind as you're going along. Think about that even though you might not know a lot of the themes and a lot of the music that's going on, they do have sources. And maybe you can go out and find those sources as you're listening to these things, or just keep it in mind as a context, as something to listen to while you're preparing. So like I said earlier, this is from the Virtuoso collection by Winwood Music. For piano and euphonium, it's about $15. I got it from justforbrass.com, which is a website that I highly suggest, and that's my go-to for every piece of music I tend to buy. That's my first stop for almost any piece of musical equipment is justforbrass.com, and I will actually link to this particular piece in the description down below. So here are my playing tips for how to go about practicing this. Some of the harder things, some things to look out for as we're kind of approaching this piece. The very first thing, and one of the subtle hard things about this piece, is there's a lot of ornamentation in the beginning, and you've got to watch out for that. Right in the very opening line. We have a turn, and it's not even a long turn, it's a very quick one. So how I approach getting through that, because one thing that we can really have difficulties with is blowing through that turn and having every single note in the turn being heard. So what we want to do is we want to try and blow through that, and what I kind of suggest is crescendoing through and into the turn, and as you practice it, practicing the turn by itself really slow. And you also want to lead into the turn a little bit. So in this case, we have a half note before the turn. So start to crescendo into the next note and let it push and propel you into the turn. And then another thing with the ornamentation is it's going to lead to some awkward fingerings. In measure 8, we have an F sharp with a turn that is supposed to be sharp, so a sharp underneath. So we have a concert F sharp going up to a concert G, which I'm actually using my third valve for because it's a lot faster for me. So I'm using that. So when I do the turn, instead of doing I'm doing just to be a little bit faster on the hand, so we can get an all. And it just strikes the hand a little bit easier. So the next difficult thing about this is you've got to watch out for some pedal range notes. Just stuff underneath concert F that just kind of jumps out, and you have to do it very quickly. You're coming from a more practical range and then zooming into that kind of stuff. Like in this case, just before the break, measure 130 area, we have the. So we go down into that low concert E flat. So some things I use to practice that, it's an octave jump. Octave jumps, especially down that far, are pretty difficult. I tend to try to aim down into the mouthpiece and really think of just playing low. And anytime that I get below really a concert B flat, I cease to play this instrument and I feel like I begin to play tuba. And so I'm thinking about somebody's playing F tuba and they're making these sounds. How do I go about that? And I'm thinking about those face shapes that they'll need. The other thing that you'll have to do too is back to the old, take it slow and just work on note from note. So I'm practicing. And then I'm working on getting in and out of it nice and slow as well. And also working on these bottom notes, the notes that we're just hitting. And playing them by themselves with a big full sound. To eventually be able to get up to the speed and be able to move very quickly with that. And then putting all of it together, because it is a little bit jumpy. And then I work on the large section of putting everything together, but also very slow as well. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm also giving a lot of emphasis to these bottom notes that I was working on single by themselves. So that over time, and as I raise the metronome speed up, I can finally get to the and add that in as well. So the next part is the really crazy part with all the hard accents and the double tonguing at 194. First off, I'm just going to give you a big warning. This whole last page is an air game. Really take up in that 3-measure break that you have right before this coming up. Just really and attack everything because you're not going to get another good breath in the rest of the time. So just really take up before attacking this page. It's going to be super helpful. I don't know if you could tell in the recording, but I actually went all the way through these accented double tongue notes, all the way through up until the downbeat of 202. Went all the way, one breath, and it's just, and I backed off. It says mezzo forte, but I backed off in my sound, and I just kind of let my air just kind of carry me through all that. When I'm practicing this kind of stuff, though, with this low accented stuff, I work on just destroying the accented notes as heavy as I can. And honestly, and this is kind of a no-no, but I'm also not looking at sounding really good. I'm just looking at making these notes speak with a big sound. And then backing off as fast as I can through the double tonguing part, and I'm doing this as slow as I possibly can to get an effect kind of like just to really emphasize this and just hit it really, really, really hard. So that, and there's no way to get around it. You're gonna have to woodshed this. It's just one of those pieces that you have to work on this. There's a lot of double tonguing in here. There's a bunch of sections in the Arbin book that can help subsequently get you through these kind of thing. But it's just one of those things that you have to sit back and practice really, really slow and gradually let the metronome be pushed up. So the last part, this last little chunk here from 214 to the end, there's a couple little catches that you just want to be aware of. Starting with 214, you want to make sure that the eighth notes get all of their length, and those are kind of accented, not with a lot of front, but they get a lot of weight to it. You want to think about those as big down bow motions on the viola if we're kind of going back to the source material. So when I'm practicing that, I'm really aiming for these low notes. The next line, with all the trills, I'm going to go ahead. They're all concert Fs. I'm going to go ahead and tell you to go back to that alternate fingering for G. You're trilling up to G and just using this. If you follow me on Instagram, you actually got to see a cool side profile. And you get to see the side of my hand, and my hand's moving almost too fast for the camera to catch. And it just allows for that. This is just kind of a frantic, fast trill. And just using this really, really fast. Alright guys, so that's it for Fantasy. Those are all my tips for practicing this and all the information I could find on it. Again, all the links to get this I'm going to put down below so you can snag it for yourself. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you want further updates for all the other videos I'm doing, please subscribe. We're going to be doing more pieces as things go along in a very similar style to what we've experienced with this one. And if you found this informational, please share this with your friends or anybody else that you think might find this helpful. Make sure, if you're not already, that you are following me on all of my other social media platforms to get updates for everything else, links for all of those as well down below. And again, if you didn't get to check out the performance video, I will again link that to you right here. Alright, thank you so much.